Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Hello and welcome back to Big Mouth, and you can keep this or any other conversation I ignite over on my Twitter constructively, please. And welcome to Saturday's edition of the dceu Daily, something I'm recording on a Friday night. So knowing my luck, when I go to upload this tomorrow, there'll be loads more news about on social media, and I have to cancel this whole video or do a dceu extra. But welcome, as I say, to Saturday's edition of the dceu Daily, where things are getting more curiouser and curiouser with the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Now, I noticed yesterday that Zack did confirm that there are more nightmare sequences in his Justice League movie. Now, we already knew from a while back that Superman will have a nightmare sequence. Interesting, but even more nightmare sequences. This is exciting. We've got to see this damn movie. This is ridiculous. Was watching Man of Steel today. So exciting. Watching it on Dolby Atmos and just thinking, what a shame. We were going to be given 2 Justice League movies, maybe 3, and we were robbed, and Zack was robbed. We've all been robbed. So Cinema Blend, Sean O'Connell, who is actually doing a release, the Snyder Cut of Justice League book, which he's going to release next year, which is very, very, very exciting, and I'll certainly be purchasing that. But right now, let's read his article in Cinema Blend. Zack Snyder's Justice League would have had more nightmare scenes in it, by Sean O'Connell. Crumbs get dropped periodically by Zack Snyder about what the director planned to include in his cut of Justice League, the one that's sitting in canisters on his shelf, as fans in the Release the Snyder Cut movement fight to get it released. Snyder has hinted at the presence of Green Lanterns and the scene where Harry Lennox, General Swanwick, turns into Martian Manhunter. What? Yeah. Zack's really dropped some bombs, and that was the biggest, wasn't it? And I really need to see that, by the way. The most recent reveal from Snyder arrived in Vero, his preferred social media outlet, and it confirmed that Zack Snyder's Justice League would have more scenes in Batman's Nightmare version, first witnessed in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. The question was asked of Zack Snyder by a fan after the director posted a photo of his Batman, Ben Affleck, wearing a tactical combat suit from the Nightmare scene in BVS. If you don't recall, in Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck, has a nightmare where an angry Superman, Henry Cavill, his troops and the parademons have overwhelmed our planet. It was a hint of what might have been to come if and when Darkseid came to Earth. Zack Snyder has been teasing dedicated fans for 2 years now about content in the Justice League movie that he created, and here he confirms that his longer version would return to the Nightmare realm, perhaps to set the stage ever further for the arrival of Darkseid. None of this is present in the theatrical cut of Justice League, the one directed by Joss Whedon. So now we are curious where Snyder would have worked in his return trip to this hellish landscape. The fan asked a question underneath this photo of Batfleck, which Snyder posted on Vero. And that actually got some fans wondering on social media if it's a photo that Zack Snyder had from the Batman v Superman days, or if this is a fresh look at Batman from Zack Snyder's Justice League. No confirmation has arrived yet, and the fight to restore Snyder's vision for the Justice League wages on to this day. Personally, I think Snyder was both trying to keep the conversation swirling around his version of Batman, especially as Matt Reeves shared his look at Robert Pattinson in the iconic role, but also to show support for Ben Affleck as he prepares to open the way back in March. Either way, we know that there will be more nightmare scenes when Justice League, the real Justice League, finally will be able to scream. Well, of course, this is a massive revelation that there are even more nightmare sequences. What's not really been clarified is if it's just one nightmare sequence or if there's more. It does sound like that there's going to be more nightmare sequences. Now, Obviously, because there was going to be a third Justice League movie, originally, this was going to be a trilogy of Justice League movies, if you remember rightly. Obviously, his first Justice League movie would be setting the scene. And we definitely know, as I said before, that Superman was going to be in or have his own nightmare sequence, which is awesome. Look, we have got to see this. I'm not going to swear. We've got to see this freaking movie. Come on, Warner Brothers. Basically, Warner Media today announced a partnership with YouTube. So there's even more ways that we could see the Snyder Cut. It could be HBO Max. It could be in theatres. It could be on the YouTube kind of subscription network as well. They have got their own streaming service. And by the way, I'm subscribed to that. So I could watch the hell out of the Snyder Cut in that. So another big revelation by Zack Snyder. And imagine actually seeing Superman's nightmare sequence, but seeing more nightmare sequences. And just to see it on the big screen would be absolutely amazing. And I'd be so down for that. We need more teases from Zack. We need the movement. We need our movement to be more proficient, more positive. We need to be hashtagging release the Snyder Cut, release the Air Cut. But we really need to be reacting to these things in a positive way. There's so much negativity towards people who were involved in basically taking down Zack's vision. And I understand the frustration, and I know my past two videos have been very negative towards some, let's just say, false narratives since the Ben Affleck interview. Look, I'm not speaking facts, I'm speaking my opinion. This is what I'm here to do, to give you my honest opinion and not lie to you just so I can get thumbs ups instead of thumbs downs. But as I say, that is my opinion. But this is great, because then I can do a positive video, get really pumped, and this is what I want to get back to now, because I just want to see this film. It is something I have imagined so many times, and for us still to be fighting for this is ridiculous. You know, there is nothing. I don't understand why they don't just release this. I don't care if you tell me, oh, they've got, you know, they're doing these new movies. No one's getting in the way of that. We just want to see two director's cuts. David Ayer's Suicide Squad and Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's all we're asking for. And I don't think that's too much to ask, is it? It was all set up for us in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. You're asking me, many of you asked me, why didn't people like those films? Well, a lot of people loved those films, but a lot of people hated them. I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't get the hatred for Batman v Superman. I don't get it. I think they're both amazing films. They look great. The narrative is beautiful as what we saw on screen. Look, for me, they're classics. For many of us, these are classic movies. There's so much to them. Drama, action, emotion, raw emotion. So I'll never understand the hatred for these movies. It's something, I suppose because I love them, it's something I will never come to terms with. You know, as I say, I watched Man of Steel today. It's such an amazing movie. And, you know, hands together, Russell Crowe. What an amazing Jor-El. That opening Krypton sequence is just beautiful. No one is ever going to touch that. It is just amazing. Visually, as I say, narratively. And I don't care what anyone says. Michael Shannon, still my favourite DCEU villain. I know a lot of you like Lex Luthor, and Lex is great. But Shannon's performance and the narrative for his character. You know, when I heard Zod was going to be Man of Steel, I said, what, again? We had Zod in Superman and Superman the movie and Superman 2. I didn't know what else they could do with him. But basically, Christopher Nolan, Goya, and Snyder did something really, really amazing with him. Here's a character who has always been kind of this soldier, this protector of Krypton. Basically, the kind of narrative here is that he's Superman for Krypton. He's the protector. Literally starts off as a good man. Not necessarily in this film, but he's fed up of the council. They've ruined Krypton. Krypton's going to implode. So he tries to save Krypton. What he does is totally wrong. We see it in the Middle East all the time, don't we? And in the end, his only focus is to, basically when he goes to Earth, is to populate Earth with Kryptonians. And, look, he's an amazing villain. It's an amazing film. And Henry Cavill is a brilliant Superman. When you look at his Superman, I love the flashbacks, but I just think he's a great Superman. And this accusation that he doesn't smile in that film is ridiculous. I love it when he flies for the first time and he's so excited as Superman. But it's Superman Begins. That's what I like about it. It really is the beginning. He's got no training. He has to suit up, literally, and fight Zod, just as he discovers his heritage and his legacy. It's just such a good film. And BVS is a great film too. And I just feel that I will never understand why they just didn't allow Zack to do his Justice League movies, then say, thank you, Zack, goodbye. I know the press was bad. I know it was negative. I know it was toxic. I get it. But at the end of the day, they had no other plans at that time. Why would you remove someone, do what they did with Joss Whedon? Again, I don't blame Joss Whedon. He had an opportunity. He took it. But the whole thing was wrong. The whole thing was wrong. No one could make a cohesive Justice League movie on the same schedule. And basically, Sugihara shafted Whedon as much as he did Zack Snyder. Just terrible. When you watch those two films, BVS and MOS, you just think to yourself, do you know what? There's no reason. We all know that Zack's Justice League would have made double what the Justice League did. It's as simple as that. Everyone knew what was going on. And there was no repeat value with Justice League. I'm not saying that Justice League is totally terrible, because there's lots of great elements to it. There really is. And considering the time constraints he had and the runtime that Sugihara made him implement, I think really it was amazing he put together anything. But an absolute tragedy. And when you hear news like this, that there's more nightmare sequences, the more we hear, you think, what actually was their problem? One of the reasons I want to see the Snyder Cut, as I've said in previous videos, is tell me, why? What were you afraid of? And I'll never understand. As I said on yesterday's video, this is one of the most unique situations within the movie industry. The movement to get the Snyder Cut released and the Air Cut, the whole thing, having a director over on a social network keep on releasing information that sounds amazing, and the studio to keep quiet. How long can they keep quiet? How long can they resist not releasing this film? I don't know. I don't know, because, when you've got companies like Subway involved, when you've got people within the industry hashtagging release the Snyder Cut, when you've got people within the comic industry fighting along with us and along with Zack, none of this really understands. This is about creative integrity as well, because Warner Brothers normally are very good with their creatives. But when Sugihara was in charge, he interfered. And the only reason nobody interfered with Man of Steel is because Chris Nolan, wonderful man that he is, really protected Zack and said, no one is fucking interfering with this movie. So there's no director's cut of Man of Steel. There's no need for one. Not that I wouldn't like to see some extra scenes, don't get me wrong. But we know what they did to BVS. The theatrical cut is an absolute mess. The editing is terrible, and that's because Zack was put in a terrible situation. And then when we saw the Ultimate Edition, we saw the real BVS, and it's amazing. Not that I noticed any problems with the theatrical cut at the time, but it's only when you see the extended edition that you realise be honest, how many of you these days, since the Ultimate Edition, bother with the theatrical cut of BVS? You don't, do you? Absolutely not. So we fight on. It's a great article by Sean O'Connell. We carry on. We want to see this movie, and we want to hear news as soon as possible, because what Zack Snyder achieved with those two films was nothing other than, marvellous, including despite the interference from the studio. Look, as I've said before, It's all about points of view. The studio had their points of view. The people they put in charge had their points of view. And Zach and Chris and David Goyer had their points of view. Too many cooks spoil the broth. And this is the problem. And this is where it all went wrong. I just hope that ultimately, before I die, I can see the Snyder Cut, because it would be an absolute tragedy if we never see this film. From the Snyder Cut to what's going on in the future of the DCEU, or is it the DCEU? I still think it is, and I still think Batfleck's involved in this film. We're not going to find that out. And still, Matt Reeves really hasn't clarified if this film is within the DCEU. When he first came out to clarify that he was involved, he said it wouldn't. Then he said he was misquoted, and of course it would be. That was a year or so, or 2 years ago, was it now? But this is a picture that's obviously been caught by the fans on a long zoom. Look at this. This is Batman on his bat cycle. And there's also a video, which I don't have right now, where we see a couple of bikes riding down a road. So really, really, really exciting. Now, what's interesting about this, if I zoom in, is it still, yes, it looks like, yeah, look. He's still got the symbol, and it still looks like it's the guns it's the gun that killed his parents. So it's still that logo, but this does look like a really different. It looks like a tactical. It looks like a tactical costume, doesn't it? So very, very interesting. This looks like a stunt double, but it looks more like Ben Affleck, doesn't it? More than Robert Pattinson as well. So again, my interest is really spiking here. These are exciting times. This is why I always say, once the film starts shooting, it's really, really exciting. And I can't wait for Black Adam to go into shooting and all the rest of the planned DCEU films as well. So just one final look there. Look at that. It's definitely, isn't it? It's still the symbol that we saw in the reveal when Robert Pattinson was on that costume test. But brilliant. Brilliant, very, very exciting. And as I say, we really don't know the full kind of picture of what the Batman is. Of course, we know it's a noir film, but we don't really know. But I'm still going with it's part of the DCEU, and we will see Batfleck in this movie. I just feel that Walter Hamada wants to connect all the dots together, even with this course correction. And said it so many times before, what's going to happen in Wonder Woman 1984? And as Gal Gadot said, something happens that changes everything. Something happens that changes everything. That couldn't be any clearer, can it? They are going to shift the timeline. And either we've got a Batman movie that's a kind of younger version of Batfleck. It's either that, or we've got a Batman movie because the timeline's been changed and the Flashpoint situation's happened. That's why Batman now looks different. So I still feel that we should. So basically, right, if it's a timeline shift, we probably won't see Ben Affleck as Batman again. But if the Batman is actually kind of a younger Batfleck, then we're definitely going to see him cameo in the Batman. So it's interesting, because if you do the timeline shift, then you don't use Ben again. You don't need to. So I suppose that seems more realistic. But I think either of those ways still means that this film will be part of the DCEU. And I think that's important. I want it to be part of the DCEU. I can't see any reason why they wouldn't want it to be part of the universe. And even if Matt Reeves is doing this trilogy that's been reported, it's important that they have more connectivity. So exciting. There'll be more news and pictures, and I'll be here to show them to you. But I think it's important. There's lots of people talking about Warner Brothers and DC making more budgeted, cheaper DC movies. Now, yes, since Walter has come in, because his experience is on making films on low budgets. There's been The Joker, there's been Shazam. Now, Aquaman cost a lot of money, but that kind of film was being made before Walter came in. So Shazam was on a budget. No question about that. Birds of Prey was on a budget. Joker was on a low budget. That is true. But Wonder Woman 1984 certainly isn't a cheap budgeted film. But I think there's going to be a mixture here and a balance. And I have no problem with them making low budgeted films, because some people try to insinuate that Shazam looked like a cheap film. It didn't look like a cheap film to me. But look, so what? Most people enjoyed Shazam. It is what it is. But I want to draw you another picture here. I want you to imagine that something horrible happened to you, right? Say you were mugged or you were beaten up or something. You'd be shell-shocked. You wouldn't leave your house. This is what happened to Warner Brothers after the Justice League movie. After they tried to do a course correction in the wrong way, they were like frightened little sheep. And they had two options. They were either going to can the whole of the DC cinematic universe and say, we'll leave it for a few years and we'll come back to it. But of course, they're not going to do that because there's money there and they've already made plenty of money. So they needed a course correction. And because they were very scared, like frightened little lambs, they said, we're not going to spend much money initially with these films in case it all goes to hell. And I think this is what's happened initially, but they will make big blockbusters. Superman will return, and things, once this settles down to a really successful franchise, and I'm talking about on a bigger scale on the box office, they're certainly going to spend more money on their film. So I want you to tell me what you think. What is your reaction to Zack teasing even more nightmare sequences in his Justice League movie? And what do you think about the pictures from the Batman set? They look beautiful to me. But I will say that Batman looks a little bit more well-built than Robert Pattinson did in that initial costume. But could be a stunt double, but still it doesn't explain why he looks like that bigger build. It could actually be Pattinson because it looks like a tactical suit and they're a bit more bulkier as well. But look, there's lots of questions to be answered about the Batman. Has Ben Affleck got a role? How does Batman look so young and different? This is about a younger Batman. Is this truly set in the past? Or is whatever happens in Wonder Woman 1984 the reason that things are different and there's no Batfleck? We are going to find out this summer when Wonder Woman 1984 comes out. And I can't wait. Please like the video, share the video and the channel. And I'll be back again tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. See you then.